Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because you want to get straight to the point, cut through all the noise. Today, we're tackling a topic that, well, it really touches all of us. Data privacy.
Yeah, specifically how it fits into the world of market research.
Right. We've all, filled out surveys or seen ads based on our data. So let's kind of unpack how that information is handled.
Exactly. We're going to dig into what actually happens to personal data in market research, why the rules, the ethical side of things are so critical.
And why it matters, whether you're the one giving the data or, a business using those insights.
Precisely. We've got a really good article to guide us here.
Okay. And our mission, as always, is to pull out the most important bits, make it make sense, and show you why it's relevant.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first, data privacy and market research. How do they actually connect? It seems obvious maybe, but what's the fundamental link?
Well, market research, at its heart, it's about understanding people, right? What they like, what they buy, who they are demographically.
Sure. To get that understanding, it collects detailed personal data, lots of it sometimes. And data privacy, well, that's basically the set of rules, the framework that says how you can legally and ethically collect that data, process it, store it.
So they're completely intertwined.
Absolutely. Market research needs the data, so it has to play by the data privacy rules. There's no way around it.
So following the rules isn't just like a good idea, it's essential.
Oh, totally essential. Adhering to those legal and ethical standards, things like getting proper consent, anonymizing data where you can, being transparent about what you're doing with it that's non-negotiable.
Mhm.
It's how you build trust with the people participating. And if you break that trust, the consequences can be pretty severe. We're talking legal penalties, fines, and serious damage to your company's reputation.
Can you give us some concrete examples, like what are the big legal frameworks people should be aware of?
Yeah, the article highlights a couple of major ones.
Yeah.
First up, you've got the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe.
Right. GTR, we hear about that a lot. We do. And a key thing about GDPR is how it really shifted power back to the individual. It forces companies, including market researchers, to be proactive, to demonstrate they actually have the right to use someone's data.
Okay.
It means clear disclosure about data processing, meeting that informed consent we mentioned, and giving people real rights. They can ask to see their data, correct it, even have it erased.
And the fines for not complying can be huge.
Very substantial, yes. It definitely got everyone's attention.
So that's Europe. What about over here in the U.S.?
Well, a big one here is the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act.
Okay. Similar idea.
Similar principles, yeah. The core insight with CCPA is giving Californians specific rights over their personal data that businesses collect. Again, it pushes for transparency, accountability from businesses.
Right.
Requires disclosure, consent in certain situations, and gives people rights to access and delete their info. The details might differ from GDPR, but the goal is the same.
Yeah.
Give individuals more control.
So whether you're in Europe or California or really anywhere these days, these laws are meant to protect you.
Exactly. And beyond just the legal requirements, there's a big ethical piece here too, right?
Yeah. Tell me about that. What's the ethical duty for researchers?
It really just comes down to respect. Respect for people and their basic right to privacy. Think about it. It's your personal information. Researchers have a responsibility to handle it carefully, with integrity. A data breach in this context isn't just some technical error. It's a breach of that fundamental trust between the researcher and the participant.
It almost sounds like respecting privacy could actually make the research better. Is that fair? It feels a bit counterintuitive, maybe?
No, that's absolutely fair. It's a really important point. When people feel safe, when they trust that their data is being handled responsibly, they're much more likely to give open, honest, accurate answers.
Ah, okay.
And that
Accurate?
honest, accurate data, that's the bedrock of good, meaningful market research insights. So yeah, privacy isn't a barrier. It actually helps improve the quality.
And I guess it probably helps the company's image, too. Makes them seem more trustworthy.
Definitely. People are way more aware of data privacy issues now. Companies that show a genuine commitment to protecting personal info, they build a much stronger brand reputation.
Right?
They're seen as reliable, as socially responsible. That can be a real competitive edge.
Okay. That all makes sense. Privacy is crucial for good research. But how do we actually increase awareness? How do we get more people to understand this and maybe even, demand better privacy protections?
Good question. The source suggests a few strategies. First, there's education and public awareness campaigns.
Like PSAs or something?
Yeah, things like that. Governments, consumer advocacy groups, even the industry itself can play a role in just informing people about how their data gets collected, how it's used, and importantly, what the risks are if it's mishandled, like identity theft or fraud.
Mm-hmm.
The article even mentions integrating data privacy education into schools or having more accessible online resources. Getting that knowledge out there early on is key.
That makes a lot of sense. Starting young, what about the companies doing the research? What's their role in driving this demand?
Well, corporate responsibility and transparency are huge here. Organizations fundamentally need to have good privacy practices baked into what they do.
Right.
And being transparent is critical. Clearly explaining what data they collect, why, how they protect it, how they use it, that builds trust.
Okay.
And interestingly, the article points out that strong privacy practices can actually be a selling point, like a unique selling proposition, a USP.
Oh, interesting. So like choose us, we protect your data better.
Exactly. Kind of like how companies promote GDPR compliance or maybe ISO certifications now.
Yeah.
It can attract users who really care about privacy.
And I suppose those laws we talked about, GDPR, CCPA, they also push things forward.
Absolutely. Strong regulations create a baseline. They essentially force companies to prioritize data privacy.
Right.
Our source stresses how important it is to have similar strong laws adopted more globally and actually enforced. Plus, things like protecting whistleblowers who report bad practices and having clear channels for reporting data breaches that all increases accountability.
Okay, so we've got growing awareness, we've got legal frameworks. How do research companies then build actual trust and transparency around the specific data they use? What practical steps can they take?
Several things are really important here. First, they need to be super clear about their methodology.
Probably like did the research.
Exactly.
Right.
Being upfront and detailed. How did they pick the people involved, the
Uh-huh.
sampling? What methods did they use to collect data? Surveys, focus groups, maybe secondary data? What tools did they use for analysis?
Yeah, okay.
That kind of clarity helps everyone, stakeholders especially, understand how they got the results and builds confidence. It's like showing your work.
Yeah, makes sense. No black boxes.
Precisely. Then there's the absolute need for ethical data collection. We keep coming back to this, but trust is built on getting that informed consent, really assuring people their privacy is protected, and strictly following the rules like GDPR and CCPA.
Right. Protects the participants, makes the research credible.
Exactly.
What about the quality of the data itself, ensuring it's accurate?
Yeah, that's crucial too. Regular data auditing and verification are key. This means periodically checking the data, maybe cross-referencing it with other sources to find and fix errors or inconsistencies.
So the insights are actually reliable.
Right. And the source also mentions that getting a third-party review or some kind of certification for their data practices can add another layer of credibility.
And being honest about limitations, is that part of building trust too?
Absolutely. No study is perfect.
Hmm.
Being open about limitations, maybe the sample size was small, or perhaps some questions could have introduced bias, or there was missing data that actually enhances trust. It shows honesty and professionalism. It gives people a balanced picture so they can make decisions knowing both the strengths and weaknesses of the research findings.
Okay. And you mentioned modern tools earlier. How do they help with transparency?
Yes. Things like real-time data sharing platforms or data visualization tools, dashboards, interactive charts, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
They can make the data much more accessible and easier to understand for stakeholders. It allows people to explore the data themselves to some extent and supports more collaborative decision-making.
Got it. Now, switching gears slightly, for people working in this field or maybe hiring market researchers, are there professional certifications they should look out for? Things that signal, good practices?
Yes, definitely. There are several well-respected certifications. For market research specifically, one big one is the CMRP Certified Market Research Professional. That's offered by ESOMAR, which is a global body, and also by some national associations.
What does that cover?
It generally focuses on skills like questionnaire design, data analysis, understanding consumer insights. Then, in the U.S., there's the PRC Professional Researcher Certification from the Insights Association. That covers a pretty broad range of market research topics.
Okay. Any others?
In the UK, the Market Research Society, or MRS, offers an advanced certificate in market and social research practice, again focusing on core competencies in designing and analyzing research.
And what if the focus is more narrow, like, say, just opinion polls or social research?
Well, those certifications, like the PRC and the ESOMAR ones, often cover aspects of opinion research.
Mm.
Surveys, polls, qualitative methods for capturing public views.
Right.
For social research, analyzing societal trends, behaviors, policy impacts, that MRS Advanced Certificate covers it. And there are also specific training programs and recognition from bodies like the Social Research Association.
Okay, good to know those exist.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something critical, fraud. How do you make sure the market research data you're getting isn't, well, fake or manipulated? How do you combat fraud?
That's a huge concern and requires a really proactive approach. The first step, according to our source, is choosing your partners wisely. Work with reputable, experienced market research firms.
How do you know who's reputable?
Look for established credibility. Do they have positive reviews,
Yeah.
a solid track record, successful past projects, and really vet them thoroughly. Check for those certifications we just talked about. Ask for client references. Look at samples of their work.
Due diligence, basically.
Exactly. Then, the research process itself needs transparency. We touched on this for trust, but it's crucial for fraud prevention too.
How so?
If the research objectives, the target groups, the data collection methods, the analysis techniques, if all that is clearly specified upfront, it leaves less room for shady practices or manipulation later on.
Makes sense. Harder to fudge the numbers if the rules are clear.
Right. And using multiple data sources is another good tactic. If you can cross-verify findings using different types of data or independent sources, it helps spot inconsistencies and reduces the impact of any potential bias or fraud in one source. And again, transparency in reporting is vital. Fully disclosing the methodology, the sample size, any limitations that allow stakeholders to judge the validity for themselves, and spots red flags if things don't add up.
And I suppose fostering a culture of integrity within the research company is important too.
Absolutely essential.
Hmm.
Training staff on the risks of fraud, having strong internal processes for checking and evaluating research findings before they go out the door, that creates a strong defense.
Okay, finally, our source mentions some recent moves by the big tech companies around data privacy. What can we learn from, say, Google, Meta, Apple?
Yeah, looking at the tech giants is interesting. Google, for instance, especially after GDPR hit in 2018, has made ongoing updates. They focused on making consent requests clearer, offering more detailed privacy settings for users.
Trying to be more transparent.
Yes, more transparency about data collection, and they talk about implementing privacy by design, trying to build privacy into products from the start. They also do regular internal audits for compliance.
Okay. And Meta, Facebook's parent company, they've had some issues.
They certainly faced a lot of scrutiny, especially after Cambridge Analytica. Since then, they've introduced more user controls, like tools to download or delete your data. They have that privacy checkup feature to simplify settings.
Right.
They've also put limits on how long they keep certain types of data, and have made efforts to comply with GDPR and CCPA, particularly around data used for targeted ads.
And Apple. They often position themselves as being very pro-privacy.
They do. Apple has made privacy a key part of their brand for a while now. A big move was introducing those privacy nutrition labels on the App Store in 2021.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. Tells you what data an app collects.
Exactly, right up front, before you download. And also in 2021, they rolled out App Tracking Transparency, or ATT. That's the one that asks users if they want to allow apps to track them across other apps and websites for advertising.
That was pretty significant.
Very. It puts control directly in the user's hands. Apple's whole approach seems geared towards collecting minimal necessary data and maximizing user control.
So quite different approaches across the board, but all moving towards more user awareness and control, it seems.
Generally, yes, driven by regulation and public pressure.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive then. What are the main things our listeners should walk away with about data privacy and market research?
I think the biggest takeaway is that data privacy isn't just a legal hurdle. It's absolutely fundamental to doing market research ethically and effectively.
Right.
It impacts everything: the quality and reliability of the data you get, the trust you build with participants, and ultimately, the reputation of the company doing or using the research.
So strong laws, corporate responsibility, transparency, ethical practices, they're all essential pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. They all have to work together.
So hopefully you, our listener, feel a bit more equipped now. You understand the landscape better, why the regulations exist, why ethics matter so much, and the importance of transparency for everyone involved.
Which leads to a pretty interesting question to ponder, actually. Given this increasing awareness and all the regulation around data privacy, how do you think market research itself might need to change? How will methods, and maybe even the kinds of insights we get, evolve to keep balancing that need for information with respecting individual rights in the future?
That's a great question to leave folks with, something to definitely think about. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today into such an important area.